Let's move on to verse 22. Verse 22, he says, on that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did I not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do so many mighty works in your name? So is there an order of magnitude to carrying out God's will? If I heal 10,000 people, am I doing God's will better than somebody who was a porter at an insurance company? Or what about if I foretell the future? We all go to psychics. We love that. What about if I write book after book after book about God? Very intellectual. What about if the most significant thing that I ever do in my life is sit on a park bench and smile at one person passing by and wish them well? Am I doing God's will any less effectively than you? No. We all have a part to play. Now get this. Any loving act is an act of God. As I seek divine guidance and carry out my part, I am in the will of God. And then I reap the same divine benefits and rewards as anyone else who is doing his or her part. That's it. No act is more or less important than any other. In fact, there is something to be said about doing the next right thing and carrying out the ordinary with great love. In fact, who made a 50-year career of that? Mother Teresa. No matter what state she was in, she just took care of the next person. She did the next right thing with great love. She insisted upon it, despite her 50-year depression and her debilitating heart disease. She insisted upon that. When no one's looking, are we continuing to come from our Christ self and extending love to ourselves and others? This leads to an extraordinarily successful life of peace and grace. Have you ever noticed that while you're busy taking care of those little things, the next right thing that comes down the pike, those troubles that plague you seem to somehow work themselves out as if by magic? You don't have your focus on the problem. We know it's not magic, though. We know it's not magic. We're letting God do God's part. And finally, verse 23, Jesus says, and then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Lawlessness. Life would go perfect all the time if we knew the spiritual laws and then we acted from them all the time. That's how we would have a perfect life. But we forget. We all forget so easily, right? It's part of the human condition. So if we focus on the mighty works, as Jesus says in verse 22, what is our real motivation? If we focus on the mighty works, is it simply to do God's will because that's the right thing to do? Or could somehow some kind of ego gratification be wrapped into that? Have we slipped back to the external or the material world, perhaps? I don't know. So have you ever heard of or ever had big cheese syndrome? Yeah? You want to be the big cheese, the one in control, the boss, the supervisor, the one getting the credit for the mighty works. Man, being the boss is overrated. I'm just going to say that. Well, if that's you or me, addicted to big cheese syndrome, I hear they're starting a new 12-step program for people who are addicted to that. Jesus says, I look right past you. I never knew you. Man, we live in a society where people are addicted to better and more. It's funny, I watched a commercial today, and it's been televised. I forget what it's for, really, but it just caught me because of this talk, and it said something like, you know what all of us want? More. More. I want less. I can't even handle what I have. Why would I want more? But why does Jesus say that? Well, because Jesus and the other ascended masters who have inspired us so much are not impressed with big things for big things' sake. They look right past the transient, finite appearances, the external life, as we've been taught in so many ways, including this section of the Sermon on the Mount, in favor of the internal life. We got the visible, we got the invisible. But everything in the visible has causation in the invisible. So doesn't it stand to reason? If we spend more time in the invisible, we have a better shot of a good visible. Right? Invisible versus visible. You with me? Okay, good. They know us by our heart. They know us by our heart. What our motivation was at the time. More important, actually, than what we actually accomplished. What was the shape, the texture, the intention of our heart? That is the important part. That's the thing to take away. Motivation. Our vantage point. So, at this point, we can sum up the section of the Sermon on the Mount as follows. God's will, generally speaking, is doing whatever we're spiritually called to do with love and from the vantage point of feathered consciousness. And once again, if you commit to that and set the intention, if you're anything like me, if you set it at 9 o'clock, at 9:05, you'd be acting from the ego. But it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to continue to reset. Number 2, since we express this consciousness individually, we can become practice what they call doing God's will, and that is getting still, seeking divine guidance, and acting on the messages you've received. Remember, write it down. It has nothing to do with allowing some outside entity or power to tell us what to do. It is an inside divine job. And number 3, we get no extra points for Dave and Buster coupons for completing large and flashy tasks in the pursuit of doing God's will. A simple life of doing ordinary things with big love makes for a tremendously successful and fulfilling life. And that also happens to be the payoff for and the main benefit of seeking and doing God's will. A life well lived, clean, peaceful, and graceful. In the title of the talk, I asked us, why is it the most important thing to do God's will? The most important thing? Well, as I said at the very beginning of the talk, it is a prescription for successful living. Internal success, divine success, and the type of success, if sought, remember the full phrase is seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, what is right, and all else will be added unto it. So if we seek that, we do not have to worry. Think about it, guys. We drop the rock. We're so carefree. We seek God's will, and everything else will be added unto it, is what the phrase says. And that's exactly what this talk is about.